much less common in MMA for fighters to accrue tremendous winning streaks than it is in boxing. That is what makes these unbeaten streaks all the more impressive. With there being so many different styles and ways to end fights, even top fighters usually do not go on winning streaks of more than 4 or 5 in a row. The mental toughness it takes to keep an edge over a perpetual conveyor belt of masters of different styles is mind-boggling. Just when a fighter thinks he can beat anyone in the world is when his next opponent usually finds a way to win. Some fighters pad their records with mediocre fighters, cans, but keeping a streak alive is still a monumental task when competing against professionals. Conor McGregor is easily the most popular and recognizable UFC fighter, but he's never been the most dominant one. McGregor experienced an impressive 15-win streak in his career, but this pales in comparison to the MMA fighters who actually have the longest win streaks in history. Here's a quick look at the 12 men and women who have the longest win streaks of all time. Out of all the streaks, these are the most impressive in history. But before we get into the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on so you don't miss any of the new videos we post. Number 12, Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva has the longest winning streak in UFC at 16 victories. From his UFC debut in 2006 against Chris Leben to before his first UFC loss to Chris Weidman, the Spider won all his fights in the promotion. During his streak, Anderson Silva picked up wins against the likes of Rich Franklin twice, Dan Henderson, Forrest Griffin, Victor Belfort, and Damian Maia. However, since his streak was broken, Silva hasn't lost at all except one outing. He picked up a decision against Derek Brunson, but otherwise lost to Daniel Cormier, Jared Cannonier, middleweight king Israeli Adesanya, and most recently to Uriah Hall, after which he announced his retirement. Despite his lack of wins in the last few years, his winning streak of 16 is yet to be broken. The Spider is undoubtedly one of the greatest middleweights ever to step inside the cage, and his contributions go beyond what the records say. His influence on the fighters of the next generation has been made evident multiple times. The opponent in his last fight, Uriah Hall, broke down in tears after knocking him out and thanked him for being an inspiration in a heartfelt moment. Number 11, Khabib Nurmagomedov. The last man to beat McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov is probably the most dominant fighter in the UFC today. Throughout his entire MMA career, no one has defeated him, and he's racked up 27 wins in total, all of them dominant victories. Nurmagomedov is also the only person on this list to still have an active win streak, so his 27 wins may keep growing. Number 10, Demetrius Johnson. Inaugural UFC flyweight champ Demetrius Johnson has the record of the most takedowns in the flyweight division and is the joint record holder of the latest finish in UFC with a submission win over Kyoji Horiguchi. Mighty Mouse has suffered only 2 losses in UFC. After his first defeat to Dominic Cruz, he went on to have a draw with Ian McCall in the 4-man tournament UFC held for the new flyweight division. But after that, Demetrius Johnson looked unstoppable. Johnson made winning look too easy as he first faced McCall again, winning it this time, and then became the first UFC flyweight champ, defeating Joseph Benavidez. He went on to defend his title 11 times, surpassing Anderson Silva's previous best of 10, making the streak of 13 wins. His streak was ended by Henry Cejudo at UFC 227 in a rematch of their 2016 bout. Number 9, Fedor Emelianenko. But unlike Nurmagomedov, Emelianenko has never fought in the UFC, much to the dismay of MMA fans. However, this hasn't stopped him from being regarded as the greatest heavyweight of all time. He racked up 27 wins in a row in the division. Emelianenko's career has taken him around the world, fighting people in Japan, Russia, and America. However, he eventually took his first loss after being submitted by future UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Werdum. Emelianenko's career has been rocky ever since, but many MMA fans still fawn over his dominance of the division. Number 8, Georges St. Pierre. Former UFC 2-division champion Georges St. Pierre, according to many MMA fans, is one of the greatest MMA fighters in history. He has lost only twice in his career, and his second loss, which took place at UFC 69 against Matt Serra in 2007, is still his last in the promotion. He is yet to be defeated since then and has gone on to amass 13 back-to-back wins, including the middleweight title win over Michael Bisping in his last outing. GSP is now retired with an unbroken streak, and there have often been rumors of his return. In May this year, it was announced that he would be inducted into the modern wing of the UFC Hall of Fame. In his 13-fight winning streak, GSP has gone through names like Matt Hughes, Matt Serra, BJ Penn, Thiago Alves, Carlos Carlos Condit, and Nick Diaz. Number 7. John Jones. The former light heavyweight champion John Jones looked indomitable inside the octagon, so much so that his streak was not technically broken inside the cage. After 13 consecutive wins, his 14th victory, which was against Daniel Cormier, was overturned to a no contest by CSAC as John Jones tested positive for a banned substance. Without that, Jones would be on an 18-win streak, 2 more than the highest ever in the UFC. The no contest result broke Jones' streak in 2017 after 7 years. After that, Jones has won 4 more times, vacated the 205-pound belt, and is now preparing to move up to heavyweight. His eyes are set on Stipe Miocic's heavyweight belt and becoming 2-division champion. Number 6. Julio Cesar Neves Jr. Unlike Emelianenko and Nurmagomedov, Julio Cesar Neves Jr. isn't considered a dominant fighter. That's because in MMA, a lot of fighters just never fight high-quality competition. Their records get stuffed with wins over random people. Neves Jr. is a legit fighter, but he fought the majority of his career in regional organizations against nobodies. That's how he racked up a 30-fight win streak before he was submitted by Jordan Parsons at Bellator 137. Bellator is a legitimate MMA organization, so it's no surprise Neves Jr. broke his win streak against a legit fighter. After his loss, he returned to fighting and winning in regional organizations. Number 5. Kamaru Usman. The 5th spot on the list has been grabbed by Kamaru Usman. The MMA fighter holds the welterweight championship. The Nigerian Nightmare may not be the most liked fighter in the octagon, but he certainly is one of the most talented that the UFC has. His ability to dominate his opponents inside the cage has always impressed viewers. Furthermore, his style of defeating his opponents through takedowns and his ground control has always been praised by his fans. The Nigerian Nightmare has lost 1 out of the 17 professional fights that he has fought. The fighter has been unstoppable throughout his career, apart from facing defeat in his 2nd match at the UFC. After that, Usman has remained the undefeated welterweight champion in the UFC and has continued his reign with a winning streak of 12 fights. Number 4. Amanda Nunes. The reigning double champion of the women's division in UFC is on an 11-fight winning streak. Amanda Nunes lost 6 years ago to Kat Zingano at UFC 178 in September 2014. Since then, she has gone on to beat the likes of Shayna Baszler, Ronda Rousey, Sarah McMahon, Raquel Pennington, Holly Holm, Germaine Dorandame, and the current women's flyweight champ, Valentina Shevchenko. Her list of 11 victims since the defeat also includes Miocic Tate and Chris Cyborg, whom she defeated to unify the UFC women's bantamweight and featherweight title belts respectively. Her last win was against Felicia Spencer, and next up, she is set to face Megan Anderson. Nunes is currently the number 1 UFC women's pound-for-pound fighter as well. Number 3. Luis Rafael Laurentino. Like Neves Jr., Luis Rafael Laurentino built up his 31-fight winning streak in regional organizations, so his record isn't as impressive. His winning streak was broken in 2016 when he lost to Fabricio Vigas Saraf in a regional fight. There's nothing really remarkable about him, but Laurentino did maintain his winning streak for several years. Number 2. Renan Barão. Unlike Neves Jr. and Laurentino, Renan Barão is absolutely legit. After losing his first fight ever, the Brazilian went on an absolute tear and stacked up a 32-fight winning streak. He didn't just beat up random guys in regional organizations. Many of his wins were in the UFC. Barão's most notable wins were against Jurija Faber, a popular UFC fighter for fans, especially those in California. However, Barão's fortunes turned around after his last fight against Faber. The Brazilian lost 7 of his next 9 fights. Despite the fall from grace, Barão definitely had one of the best and longest winning streaks of any UFC fighter ever. Number 1. Travis Fulton. Some MMA fans may have heard of Fulton, but many haven't. Technically, he was a UFC fighter. He competed in it during the organization's early days. However, since then, Fulton primarily fights in regional organizations. In fact, he's had over 318 fights on his professional record, racking up a 40-fight win streak somewhere in there. Fulton will never be a UFC champion, but at least he has the longest win streak in MMA history. Over the years, UFC has seen some impressive winning streaks. While some fighters have managed to retire with their streaks unharmed, others have succumbed to an opponent. And that wraps up the video. Thanks for watching.